Welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series, novels, and films. For this episode, a family contrives, not everyone survives, all whilst an immigrant strives, and Chris Evans drives. That's right, we're talking Knives Out. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Ford, joined as always by Andrew Knuckles.
Hello.
And Joel Killingsworth.
Hello.
I love that Andrew continues to
subvert expectations.
Dude, no.
He's like, it's like a game of chicken every time, right? Sometimes he's like, I'm going to stare Joel in the face and not take his intro line. And sometimes we're going to stare him in the face and yes, take his intro line.
Tread on it just a little bit. It's like the two kids in the back seat and one of them puts their hand just across the other one's side.
That's just part of it. I mean, you have to subvert expectations.
That is going to be maybe a theme tonight. Today, currently, this episode.
Yeah,
I butchered that. That's fine. Anyways, moving forward, before we jump all the way forward into subverting the expectations, that is Knives Out.
But not really subverting expectations because we're going to review the movie. So
but did you have expectations prior to that?
I don't know. Did the listeners have expectations?
They could.
Prior to
you don't
this?
know. You don't know who they are. Anyways, before we get all the way into that, we're going to talk a little bit about maybe some single location stories because that fits with the setting for Knives Out, for most of Knives Out.
Yeah.
Or the predominant storytelling that takes place.
Mm-hmm. I'd say like over 75% of whatever we're talking about needs to take place in relatively one location.
Yeah, so we're talking kind of like your classic trapped in a house horror stories, or your.
But we're not actually talking that because none of us really watch horror.
Right,
but it's okay.
or like a whodunit, and everybody's trapped in this one location on a boat or in a house when it's storming or something, and they have to figure out who the murderer is.
Wild shenanigans.
Or someone stranded on a desert island for the entire film of Castaway, that kind of thing.
Right.
We're not doing Castaway, but
that one started in a plane, sir. Anyways,
most of the film takes place on the island.
I know. He goes in the ocean too. Joel, you want to start us off?
I'm starting. All right.
I mean, I don't want to start us. I don't want Andrew to start us.
Well,
wow, rude.
I'm going to start us in that case.
All right.
And I'm going to go with an Agatha Christie novel called "And Then There Were None."
Okay.
This is sort of a twist on a classic whodunit, where it's really sort of a mystery dipping into kind of more of the serial killer thriller kind of genre.
Okay.
And where you have all of these people that don't know each other are all invited to an estate out on an island just off the coast of New England. I don't remember if this is off the Massachusetts coast or if it's off of Maine or somewhere up there.
New England is generally just Massachusetts.
And the way that it is kind of couched is that, this is a prestigious event that they're being invited to. But as they all come, they realize that all of them have no idea why they're there.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas they all thought they were the only one. And they start dying and are being specifically murdered in accordance with a nursery rhyme that has
that's creepy.
that starts with 10 subjects, and each one has a verse of how they're killed.
Oh,
and that's
wonderful.
That's how each murder occurs. And so ergo the title, "And Then There Were None."
Okay.
And so the protagonists have to discover who the killer is and what's going on before time runs out and they too are on the chopping block.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I've never heard of this one before.
It's quite enjoyable.
Okay. I'm only sort of familiar with, the obvious Agatha Christie's, Your Murder on the Orient Express, that kind of thing. Not as familiar with something like this.
And this one doesn't have any of her recognizable characters.
Right.
This
There's
is a one-off.
no Poirot.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. So I denied Andrew the privilege of going first. I'm going to deny him the privilege of going second and bestow upon him the privilege of going last. So in that case, I'm going to take my shot, and it is 1985's Clue. So this is a film.
And a board game.
Well, it's based on the board game. It's based on the board game.
The board game came way before the movie.
Yes. I said it's based on if it's going to be based on the board game had to come before the movie. That's how
it could be a concurrent release.
Anyways.
It could be a promotional advertisement for the game.
Anyways. So, very similar to Joel's entry, we have a cast of characters who are invited to a remote house in a stormy location, and none of them realize that they have all also been invited there for the specific purpose, which is everyone is being blackmailed by one other person at the house. And yeah, hijinks ensue because people kind of start dying off. And it's really just a really fun, they're dying off. It's really fun. It's a really fun and entertaining movie because they do a really good job with the humor mixed in.
Mm-hmm.
Your kind of headliner names here, Tim Curry.
Yep.
Not as a villain, but as kind of the host.
Mm-hmm.
And Christopher Lloyd's in here as one of the.
He's still kind of creepy though.
He just has that oily feel to him, but he's not technically the villain. But there is a lot of misdirection because again, someone dies and then people continue to die despite their best attempts of, oh, we should all group up. Oh, a cop has arrived. Oh, this is going on. Oh, blah, blah, we should search the house, et cetera, et cetera. And it gets progressively more, they can become more blasé about, oh, well, quick, check the study. Nope, 2 bodies. Everything's fine in there.
Yeah.
Things like that. So the humor in it is really, really good. It didn't do great when it was released in box offices, partly because when it was released in films, it was released with 3 separate endings.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on where you were, you got a different ending. And this is pre-internet, so you couldn't get together and decide, oh, this is how these things could be. So everyone was just kind of mad at each other because they all disagreed on how it actually ended. Who did it?
I think that's so cool, though.
Right. Nowadays, it sounds awesome. And if you actually have the DVD, it'll do all 3 endings. Boom, boom, boom. And it does like a little kind of like a silent film screen in between where it's like, that's one way it could happen, but what about this?
Yeah.
Actually, you should consider this as well, and stuff like that in between. But yeah, really great humor. It's a really, really entertaining film. I mean, it has, just something that doesn't give anything away, but Christopher Lloyd's character picks up another one of the other characters whose car is broken down, and they pull up to the house, and it does the classic horror movie, house silhouette and the lightning strikes, and the car dies. And she goes, why'd you turn off the car? Because I didn't. It died. I think it's scared. That's not the line. I butchered it, but it's okay. Anyways, Andrew?
Okay, so I picked an anime. Go figure, right? This is just how it works.
Doing your job.
Yep. And so I picked the 2015 series called Death Parade. And the general synopsis of this is, let's say that you are a arbiter of good and evil, and you are essentially a bartender at the same time. And whenever someone dies, they come to you, and you essentially make them play death games that will essentially determine whether they be resurrected or eternal damnation.
Okay.
So wait, are death games kind of like reindeer games? Are we talking like Monopoly or?
Most of the time it's going to be like, it's simple, like children's game level stuff where
Monopoly.
It's easy to understand, but
Monopoly.
There is some decent strategy behind it.
Okay.
And throughout the course of the show, you're going to see multiple people that kind of come down, and the main characters are really just these arbiters that are kind of, they're neutral parties, and they basically provide the game, and the people just have to play it. And throughout the course of the game, you get to see lots of kind of like why they're there. So there's some like little mystery elements of like, there's a couple that both died at the same time, but then you kind of find out that one of them killed the other one, but then other stuff kind of happened at the same time.
So you get in a little. So like the story structure is just almost a montage of other people's stories coming through your location.
Yep.
So it has a bunch of kind of little vignettes.
Yeah. So you have, so you actually get some really interesting character work, and it never delves too deep into every single character, except for the main characters, because you get to see more vignettes of their life and everything as it kind of goes through the show, but in very small little tidbits of just how they react to how these people are also reacting kind of thing.
Right.
Okay.
And it's a fantastic show, and it does a really good job at the games change. It's not always the same, it's like you're not always playing paper, rock, scissors or something, but and it just kind of changes based on what they kind of died from.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it kind of relates to their
a little
story.
bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty fantastic show. I definitely recommend it. It's only 12 episodes, pretty easy watch.
Mm-hmm.
And it all takes place just basically in this, not purgatory, because it's not like a punishment, because they are having the opportunity to possibly go back and live another life, essentially. So it's just like this little middle ground. It's just, and it all takes place within the skin of just, being a cool, swaggy bartender, and you're just, making people play these crazy games. So.
Okay.
I recommend it.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I mean, I have not heard of it prior to this. So.
Yeah, and it's got a good emotional payoff at the end. So,
okay, yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. Well, on that note, it is time for us to focus back on the main topic, Knives Out, and we're gonna go over to Joel for maybe a little synopsis, if you will.
So here we kind of have our classic whodunit sort of scenario. We have a novelist who is advanced in years, who has a kind of a live-in nurse, Marta, who's our main character.
Mm-hmm.
And this novelist is discovered one morning dead in his study, ostensibly by his own hand.
Right.
And however, the police are continuing to investigate in a way that doesn't seem to match up with the physical evidence. And we learned that a gentleman detective, kind of your stand-in for the Poirot or Sherlock Holmes type, has received an anonymous tip and has come in to figure out exactly what's going on here. And a lot of expectation is perhaps subverted, and shenanigans ensue.
Oh, we went with shenanigans this time, getting a little highbrow instead of hijinks.
There you go.
Yeah.
Like that. Okay. Well, on that note, what kind of scores did we give this? Now, we look at this from two angles. The first is what we consider a technical score, and we're looking at our 4 pillars of review. That being the spectacle, the performance, the score, and the plot. And then separately, an entertainment score that does not factor in. This is all average across the 3 of us. Mm-hmm. So for that technical score, what we got?
We got a 7.8 out of 10.
That is respectable.
Yep, quite good.
Yeah, yep. It beats the No Way Home bar.
Yeah, I was going to say, it beats No Way Home.
Yeah.
Is that's like the minimum reference at this point?
Yeah, I think that was the 7.3.
Okay.
So that's a pretty good, it's just a little better than the C bar, basically.
Makes it sound so bad.
Average isn't great. Just going to throw that out there. Anyways.
By definition, you are correct.
Technically correct.
Which is the best kind of correct.
However, for entertainment, as those two can be wildly different, we find in this case it is in fact not. It goes up an entire 0.2 of a point from a 7.8 to an 8.0 for entertainment.
So it does improve. It gains something in that switch. And the main reason we look at an entertainment score as a separate score is there could be something that is technically bad, but you just really love it.
Yep.
Or there could be something that is technically brilliant and it is just really boring. And we think it's important to make that distinction because sometimes the score can be wildly different. It often isn't, I guess, because of us, but so it goes.
That's not necessarily true. I mean, like there are definitely films that we've already reviewed, like Turning Red is one of them, where I genuinely love the film.
Mm-hmm.
You guys didn't. I mean, and that's totally fine. It's just I gave it, I think, like maybe a 9, and then you guys gave it like 6s, I think, or something like that.
But we could definitely recognize it as well done technically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it just normally it does feel like we're usually fairly close in technical and entertainment.
Well, particularly once the average occurs.
Right. But we have had some that have gone a little bit out of line.
Yeah.
Those are other episodes on spoilersintendedpodcast.com. You can listen in on them. Find out which ones.
Okay.
So guys, spoiler-free review.
Yeah, Knives Out. This is the second time I've seen this film. And I enjoyed it. I mean, it is definitely, knowing the twists that are coming, definitely take a lot of the oomph out of a mystery. That's kind of the whole point.
Sure.
Right.
And I was watching it by myself this time, so I didn't have anyone else to kind of live vicariously through that hadn't seen it before.
You get to see them have the experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So watching it this time, you're really more trying to focus on the smaller details of whenever they show, little cutaway shots or anything like that, where you're like, oh yeah, that's what they referenced towards, like, later in the movie or whatever. And it's still an entertaining film. I really liked Daniel Craig just as an actor. So most of the time, whenever he's in a film, I'm going to go watch it. And this is definitely one of those films where I enjoyed pretty much the entire cast of characters. They have a pretty star-studded
there's a lot of names.
Cast. You have Anna Darmus as Marta, then you have Daniel Craig as Blanc. Then
the detective.
Then you have Jamie Lee Curtis, who's the daughter of the deceased book writer, and just a cacophony of other characters, and they're always really fun.
And it's also, like in a whodunit kind of scenario, you really have to plant your field with a whole bunch of possible murderers, right? So you
need to have a lot of red herrings.
A lot of motives going on of people having conflict and stuff. And this film, just like everybody related to the murder victim, is just absolutely horrible to everybody else. So
they're all terrible people.
At every moment you're like, yeah, that person could commit murder. I totally believe that.
I would believe it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I really like about the film too is the cinematography is actually pretty solid. There's a lot of interesting shots, and the locale that they're at, which is this kind of manor in Norfolk, which is probably Virginia or Massachusetts, because there's two. There's
I would
at least two.
I would lean towards Massachusetts over Virginia.
It would, yeah. And if it's from Norfolk, Massachusetts, then that is where I'm from. Well, I'm from Natick, but it's basically right next to it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's billed as kind of a waspy New England, so I would say Massachusetts over.
While you talk, I will figure that out.
All right, confirm that for us. Okay, brilliant. So unlike Andrew, this is the first time I've seen this film. I have a objection to the director a little bit, maybe, or at least had one. It's decent. It's pretty good. There are some things I liked, some things that were maybe just okay. The characters are good. That you need
strong characters for a whodunit.
Well, you need performances, and you need everyone to really sell themselves as an individual. And I think they did a great job of that. And also, again, like y'all said, you have to seed the field with multiple possibilities, and there needs to be conflict of interest there where they could all have a reason for it.
It's Massachusetts.
Nailed it.
Yep.
And they do a good job. There's a lot going on, and that may also be an objection. There may be too much going on, especially at the start. They kind of throw a ton at you. And I think the rest of the movie maybe hurts a little for that, because the middle kind of drags. You don't get the whole pieces coming together as you thought they were going. I won't even say as you thought they were going to, but you get to see, you already have all the pieces at that point, and they just don't really come together very fast.
Well, it's also, and not to trying to skirt spoilers here,
right,
but it is structured in a way that is different from your typical whodunit.
Correct. Yes.
And so while on the one hand, that makes it a fresh experience, if you are, if you've seen a lot of whodunits, then this isn't the same formula that I'm used to. So it's kind of fresh and new and different and interesting in that way. But I could see where if you like the formula and you want the formula and you're expecting the formula, this is not that.
Well, and I feel like it wasn't so much that, I already solved who did it. It just almost from the beginning was like, okay, well, I know how this is going to play out. And that made it kind of boring, because then I just had to sit there and wait for it to actually play out roughly how I thought it would. So, and that's just a personal issue. Joel?
Well, I think that one of the best parts is watching the detective go around and interact with everybody, right? Because he's playing kind of the quintessential Southern gentleman. And it's also, so I have an objection to Daniel Craig's accent.
I let you have this one, yeah.
Right. And it is such a very thick, over the top Southern accent. And I can't decide whether or not I want to back my objection completely, because on the one hand, thick, over the top Southern accents, there are real people who speak like this.
Yes.
Right. But when used in film, typically it is used in a derogatory fashion.
Yeah, it feels more derogatory than it does genuine.
But in this case, they gave that accent to the smartest character in the piece. And so you're like, what? Do I really feel bad about this representation in this instance? I'm not sure. Even though it carries with it the connotation of all of the derogatory representation from other pieces. And
he is from basically an undisclosed location in the U.S. It could, there are some derogatory terms in the film that are like, oh, you're from Kentucky. Mm-hmm. He's not from Kentucky. He's probably from Louisiana or maybe Mississippi, but they never actually tell that. You just have to kind of pick up the clues, as it will, from his name and his general accent.
But the demeanor that they give him, where he's the extremely polite gentleman.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Interacting with the different characters at play and seeing what actually pushes him across the line into being stern and derogatory, as opposed to just being nauseatingly polite, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so getting to watch those interactions across the whole film was probably the most charming part of the piece.
Yeah. Well, especially him being the Southern gentleman in basically New England or the North, specifically Northeast, which is historically not Southern nice.
Yeah.
Right.
You just don't have the what's the word for it?
I don't know.
Southern
hospitality.
Hospitality. There it
easy.
Is. So you have this very large juxtaposition of him, the Southern gentleman, and nowhere near hospitable environment for him.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. He is definitely an outsider on multiple levels.
Yeah.
As the detective who is trying to find something wrong, also as a Southern gentleman in a very New England waspy style house, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah,
he definitely has a unwanted aspect there from the rest of the cast.
Mm-hmm. And I think the movie is very good, and I think it's very well put together. Upon the second viewing, I'm not sure that I would recommend viewing it multiple times unless you're with other people that have not seen it before.
So you think the real payoff is having that initial reaction?
Yeah, I think the real payoff is like, like watching the stuff kind of happen and unfold, where watching the second time, I really wasn't that impressed with the film, which is kind of weird because I loved it the first time I watched it.
Well, I mean, I think, like you were saying before, though, like the entire mystery genre has that problem.
It does.
Because the point of consuming the story is getting the twist.
Yeah. So that's kind of watching it with other people that haven't seen it definitely elevates that, because then you can watch vicariously through them. You're like, oh, you should watch this movie. It's really good. And you can kind of like side-eye watch them.
Well, or if you're on a rewatch, there are so many clues that were laid out that on knowing where it's going to go, and you can pay more attention to stuff happening in the background, you can be like, oh, I missed that. That would have told me, or this piece, if it's really well.
Yeah. In this one, they basically hold all of the general footage of stuff happening and basically until right at the end.
Which that's a classic whodunit move. They gave you some of the you shouldn't be able to know this stuff like right towards the end of the beginning.
Yeah.
That kind of sets you into the middle path. And that I again, not holding all that to the end maybe also kind of hurt it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You made me hesitate and be like, oh God, was it me? Did I mess this up?
I'll cut that out.
Yeah.
Alrighty, that sounds like we are moving on to the intermission. If even the thought of spoilers makes you want it, I'm going to start that over.
You have the opportunity. And we're live. 3, 2.
Alrighty, that sounds like we are moving on to the intermission. If even the thought of spoilers makes you want to be sick, then this is your chance to get away clean. But before you go, check out our other content at spoilersintendedpodcast.com. But if you're ready to see what lies at the inevitable conclusion of this story's arc, then come and join us. Together, we'll find out what's at the center of the donut. Is it a hole? or is it yet another donut?
Alrighty, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that quick little intermission. In case you didn't get the message, it is all spoilers all the time, all the way forward. And on that note, it is time to jump into the spectacle.
Yep.
And I'm going to let Andrew have this one first.
I swear, I get spectacle first basically every time.
Well, if you don't want it, I'll give it to Joel.
No, I'll take it.
Oh, okay. So, hey, he's going to complain about it. Like, no, I still want it.
So I gave spectacle an 8.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the film, particularly Rian Johnson, despite some of the general misgivings that the Star Wars population of fan base does not like him for various reasons.
Well, a significant portion, not the whole fan base.
Yeah, like half. It's
Yeah,
it's pretty much
half.
like right down the middle.
Yeah.
They do not enjoy his directorial style for things that they love. Okay, that's fine. We're going to move on. But I actually, every other thing that I've seen that he's done, I've actually really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
So he did 3 episodes of Breaking Bad, which is one of my favorite TV
It's one
shows.
of the best TV shows ever, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And he did two considered the best or worst episodes, it just depends on who you ask. So he did The Fly, which is considered, quotation marks, a filler episode of Breaking Bad, where they're just trying to catch a fly in the laboratory for the entire episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it was either hated or loved, just depends.
That's the kind of episode that can be just amazing, though.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Right.
I loved it. Then you have Ozymandias, which was kind of the penultimate, ultimate climax for the show, like the series as a whole in season 5. And it's probably one of the best episodes of TV ever made.
Okay.
And he directed it, and it's fantastic.
Well, on that note, we're talking about Knives Out.
Well, yeah. So, no, I'm getting there.
I know.
So then you have Knives Out, and watching it, he does such a really good job at visual composition.
Mm-hmm.
He does, and I love that basically he takes, you have this big kind of ring of knives all pointing to a specific point in the center, the donut.
Basically where someone's head would be if they're sitting in that chair.
Exactly. Yeah. And throughout the film, he has people sitting in front of it, but he never does a straight on shot until the kind of the aha moment for Daniel Craig's character towards the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
But he always hints at it. He's always like a little canted, or he's on the side of it, but everyone's still sitting in front of it, but not until Daniel Craig is sitting in that chair is when you get the power shot of basically all of the knives, and Daniel Craig's head is directly in the middle of it, which is just fantastic. And the rest of it's shot very competently, and it's just and it does a really good job at keeping the tension, especially whenever they're doing match shots from basically when they're kind of recalling the story of Marta giving the old man his
Harlan. Yeah.
His medicine, and then they basically flip it to the other angle where the lady comes up and like knocks on the door and sees that they're okay, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Joni.
I don't remember half of the characters' names. Just gonna say that now.
I actually remember most of them, but I also wrote them down, so it helps.
Yeah.
So Joel?
Well, I also gave it an 8 for a spectacle. I feel like, the opening shot of the film is where you get this really moody look at the mansion. And there's this really striking, kind of bizarre music. Or just
it's almost the classic horror.
Yeah. And then
stretched
and then
out.
and then you have the dogs kind of slow-mo running across the yard. And it's just like a mood is being set here. I am being prepped for the experience that I am about to have, right? And anytime that a director can reach out and say, okay, I want you, the audience, to be sitting right here. Okay, now we can start the film. I like that.
Right.
There's also, we talk about subversion of expectation with Rian Johnson because that's kind of a buzzword coming off of all of the arguments surrounding the Star Wars film, right?
Well, I feel like at this point I could just kind of maybe say maybe it's his shtick.
Yeah.
And this is second go at it, basically.
But this film is rife with examples of how you do that really well.
It's successful, yeah.
Yeah, and also like right coming off of the opening shot, you have the housekeeper coming up and trying to find Harlan to give him his breakfast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she comes in to his study and finds him dead on the couch. And what you expect, what you have been programmed to expect through repeated exposure, is that the housekeeper screams, drops the tray, and the plates and cups shatter on the floor.
Yeah, right.
And so she goes to do it and then catches the tray because it's starting to wobble. She's like, oh, no. And then she just curses at herself and kind of, collects everything.
See,
and so
I actually thought she spilled the coffee on herself. When she
really?
Cursed. Yeah, but I have to rewatch. I've only seen it once. I have to rewatch it.
But anyway, so like it's a really fun thing where the expectation is not inherent to the situation. The expectation is in you.
Right. And usually the shot at that point drops to the housekeeper's feet and you see the tray shatter and then you hear the scream over top and it fades to black, right?
Yeah. And they have a close-up shot of the dagger that has the blood on it on the carpet.
And maybe like a fragment of what was just shattered is next to it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a classic play right there.
And so by not doing that, he has both done it because you already see all of that in your mind and been able to give you a little stab of humor because, he didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so that was like, there are little moments like that.
Okay. Yeah. And he just repeats those throughout the film to kind of hammer home. It's like, this trope? Nope. So close.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am a firm believer in parody and I also gave it an 8.
All right.
Yep.
And for a lot of the similar reasons, like Andrew said, the composition, and I do like the teaser he does with that, where you're going to get this shot at some point, but he doesn't just open with it.
Yeah, he does. You don't just get it.
Well, and he plays with it because some of the interviews that are happening in front of the Donut of Knives are shot from one side of it, like the right side angle, and the other is shot from the left. So you're hitting either side of that spacing, but you just don't get quite that perfect full on. And I like that. That was a fun play, right?
Mm-hmm.
They made a good use of some dolly zoom style shots that are kind of the classic Jaws move, which I on one level I want to say, oh, that's worth points. On another level, I want to say, no, that's like the bare minimum. If you didn't do it, it would have been points off because this is so necessary for a tense style, right?
When you have a mystery, you have to have interesting characters. You have to have a good plot, but then you also need to have interesting camera angles to create tension in dialogue scenes or dialogue heavy scenes.
Right. And Joel talking about the tray at the start, right? You get from the start, we've already got an interesting camera angle because we get slow-mo dogs, which is just kind of random, right? And then we get the tray being set up and it's a very, very stylish, classy breakfast tray.
Like a Victorian or like a Tudor.
Gilt gold, and then the coffee cup goes on there, and it's just a standard run-of-the-mill. This would be on, your coworker's desk style, funny saying on it. So that was already kind of the twist, even before you get up the steps. The house was really cool. I really like the way they would focus on kind of the bizarre decorations and kind of it's a very eclectic place. Old man who's been here a long time. Writes murder mystery novels, but kind of bizarre stories or whatnot.
In his weird castle.
Yeah, and he's just been collecting this over time, and these things just exist, and everyone else accepts it, but you as the newcomer are looking around going like, man, there's just this house that's just got eyes everywhere. And
speaking of the decor, there's also the prominently featured portrait of Harlan himself that you keep coming back to throughout the film. And every time you look at it, you have new context as to maybe his relationship with his family or what actually happened that night. And each time, even though it's the same painting, I'm sure that his expression is just a little different because I have more context about him as a person.
A lot of it is because it's different members of the family who are looking at the portrait. Yeah. And so you're kind of getting their impression of how do they view their father and how their father views them. Because as we go through the story, we get more and more of those different relationships. And so it's the same thing of the eyes that track you. It's the same expression. It just has more meaning every time you see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously we all gave it 8s. Pretty decent. So let's go on to something else that is also pretty decent.
Yep.
And it's the performance.
Joel, you can start.
No, he doesn't. No, I'm going to go first.
Joel, you can start.
Yeah, fine. Joel can start.
Okay, fine. Well, I gave performance a 9.
Okay.
I really don't have a lot of complaints. There's the uneasy feeling about Daniel Craig's accent.
Right.
And beyond that, it's just you have such a large cast of characters, and all of them have a relatively small amount of time to really make their impression. And I would say that all of the adult actors and actresses pulled that off flawlessly. There are some teenage members of the family.
We get 2 of them, I think.
Yeah, that are just kind of they're there. They're not masterfully portrayed, but you don't necessarily expect that.
They're very much so side character stereotypes.
Yeah. But overall, it's just a masterclass in we need to get characterization out there pronto, and we need to make it stick.
Archetypes.
And I think that they managed to add each individual performer managed to add their flair to it.
Yeah, and that's fair. I'm going to take this next.
Sure, go ahead.
Give you a shot at last. I also gave it a 9. Daniel Craig's accent gives me pause. Any Southern accent on screen gives me pause. And yeah, I would agree. The teenagers are probably, I don't know, the male teenager is probably the weakest because he's just kind of there as a joke, basically.
Yeah.
The I don't know who the actors are for these, but the female one, she actually has real interactions and parts, real things to say, basically. Yeah. I really liked Jamie Lee Curtis's effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did a really good job with the style of a whodunit where they have the interviews to start and you get to be introduced to each character as they would describe themselves.
Yes.
As opposed to how other people see them. And it's a chance for the actors to really show off, right? To really, really hammer home who this person is and why they're different than the other people in the house.
Yeah.
And really how you're going to keep track of them throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Andrew?
So I was considerably harsher because of Daniel Craig's accent, and I gave it a 7.
Okay.
Oh wow.
Okay. I initially had it at a 9, and then as I was writing the review, I went down to an 8, and then I was like, I don't know. I think it needs to be a 7. Mostly, I mean, his accent was a little ridiculous. But honestly, the Jamie Lee Curtis and Ana de Armas was fantastic. I thought they did such a good job with their roles. Jamie Lee Curtis was one of the only characters that, like, she didn't really. I mean, she had quotation marks a reason that she could like possibly like murder her father, but she was never really in any kind of actual suspicion because like she was a crass businesswoman, but not in the sense of her like having any kind of real motive.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, she was the one golden child.
Yeah. Then you have at the end, where she finds the blank letter and then she sees the heat writing or whatever, the hidden invisible ink.
Yeah. Well, she talks about the games that her and her father played.
Right, which at the time you think is metaphorical.
Right.
Yeah.
And like there's the special way he communicated. And you're just like, oh yeah, he just like talked to you.
A weird way. Yeah.
Or she's just full of it, like trying to be the special.
Exactly. But no, then it actually is. But
they were just trading invisible ink messages.
Because they're quirky and it's just,
but the thing that actually kind of detracted it from me was Chris Evans, I felt didn't really do a very good job with being quotation marks the villain. Like
I thought he was a good heel, actually.
He plays a very good heel, and he plays a very good jilted child from the family.
Trust fund baby.
But I feel that there could have been anything else. I don't know. Like he just didn't really do it for me, and it probably doesn't help either that he was the first real suspect that you had, and then he ended up just being the one that did stuff.
Well, I feel like that was kind of on purpose because like they want you whenever you're writing this kind of thing and you're not doing it in the in the time-honored tradition of, well, I'm going to write it as if it could be any one of these and I'm just going to pick one at the end. Right. Yeah. But if you have a plan from the onset, then one way to attempt to do it is to make sure that your audience takes a look at the person that actually does it and then dismisses them as a red herring. So that when you reveal that it was them all along, they're like, oh, you got me.
Well, at some point you have to make the audience like the character. And they did make an attempt at that midway through.
Well, so the problem though is, and this is more of a, you see this a lot with TV and anime and everything of whenever you have side characters and then the side character suddenly gets almost a whole like 20 or 30 minutes worth of screen time in the course of over an episode, you're like, they're either going to die or they're going to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was
narratively, we're spending too much time here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you start having lopsided amounts of screen time for single characters, you're like, there's no way they're not involved at this point.
It is very difficult to hide what you're doing from a narrative structure perspective.
It is.
It is so hard because once someone is familiar with the patterns of how things play out in this kind of story, I don't care how many expectations you subvert. There are rules
that you have to kind of follow.
That you have to follow to some extent, or else the story just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. And that this is more plot things, but kind of going back, basically the more that we got of Chris Evans' character or Ransom, it was just kind of like, I know this is where this is going, and you need to do something more with this guy to make him way more likable as a person. And they just never really did anything with it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's valid.
Yeah. Sorry. One quick note: the help or the secondary detective, not the main one that did a lot of the talking, but the one that was really into all like the mystery novels and stuff.
Trooper Wagner.
Yeah, he was so much fun. Because like he was like, especially at the end, whenever the other detective was like, "Come on, let's just get on with this." He's like, "No, wait, this is the best part."
Yeah.
This is where he explains how everything happened.
Yeah.
I was uncertain where to put it, and it may be more relevant later, but coming from Rian Johnson's other efforts, the humor in this was much better than I expected it to be. It's much better placed.
Yeah, well, it's good quippy dialogue.
Right. Yeah. It hit and then moved on, right? I do want to throw a shout out to Kay Callan, who was a great Nana. She didn't really have much to do, but at the same time, she was a great foil in a lot of ways. Just who she by existing, especially the dialogue they get described, like no one's really sure how old she is.
Right.
Well, I love at the end after they all kind of are having the meltdown because they're not going to inherit anything, and she's just sitting in the middle of them, and then the scene cuts right before or right after she goes, "Huh."
Yeah, she has that little laugh. Like, yeah, it was good. It was well. Whether you would count that more maybe in plot a little later or not, but I think it was well placed. Just kind of pegging off the humor. So moving forward into the score
of the score,
I'm gonna take it first and go short and simple here.
Sure,
I gave it a 7.
Yeah,
I think did a good job of building tension. And I think it had some good emotional payoff in places. But for me, at least, there was no individual piece that really stuck with me.
The opening sweeping shot of the estate was pretty cool, but they never really replicated that throughout.
Right, it didn't get a callback or however you want to call it later in the show or the movie to really hammer it home. Right,
it's still a show.
It's the same thing. Anyways, that's all. I don't want to steal points around here. So
I gave it a 7 for basically the exact same thing.
See, easy.
Oh, well, I gave it an 8 for, essentially.
Justify yourself.
Essentially the same, but I felt that while the specifics of the music in the opening shot were not referenced again, the general feeling of just kind of being quirky was carried through as a through line. And
that's fair.
And so that elevated it to me because it grabbed hold of the feeling of what it wanted to be and it stuck true to that.
All right. It had a consistent tone.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is going to just go right back to performance for a second. Anna de Armas and I can't remember the father's name.
Harlan?
Yeah. Christopher Plummer?
Yes, Christopher Plummer. They had such fantastic chemistry.
Oh yeah, they were great together. Yeah, we didn't touch on that, but they were great together.
You could tell just in all like the little flashback scenes that she had with him, you could definitely tell that they had really good on-screen chemistry, and you could feel that like they were actually just genuine friends.
Well, every other interaction for Harlan was him having to be the father, the stern father, Whereas with her, he could just be himself.
And there's no expectations at all.
Exactly.
It's just, it's like, well, I'm your nurse and I'm here, but at the same time, like I'm going to genuinely listen to you and give you feedback if you ask for it.
Yeah, and I'm just an old man doing an old man thing, you know? Yeah.
No.
Okay. Well, we've revisited performance, but we gave our scores. Moving forward into the plot, possibly the most important part of any whodunnit.
It
Indeed.
is the most important part of any whodunnit.
Who wants to take it first?
I'll go.
All right.
We'll probably start low.
Go low to high.
Okay, so I gave it a 6.
Okay.
Mostly just because of just you could see it from a mile away that Chris Evans' character was just going to be the bad guy because they just gave him so much screen time compared to everyone else. And by the only other one that was even kind of close was the son, that ran
Walt?
the Walt, that ran the publishing house,
the one with the cane.
Yeah. He was the only other one that could like possibly be kind of close, but then there was just already so many other things that just pushed him out of the running of being the murderer.
I really wish they had highlighted the concept of, they climbed the trellis. Well, Walt's out because he has a broken leg or whatever.
Yeah, and that's the problem too, is because they essentially sidelined Chris Evans' character for the first half of the film, and then he just kind of shows up and is like, oh, guess what? Now he's just going to be on screen for the next
forever
for the rest of the film. It's like there's no way that, one, he's not involved, and two, like he's the bad guy. Yeah, and then the only thing that you're really trying to figure out is like, all right, how is he the bad guy from the sense? And then I also felt, you'll get one. I also felt that that basically the switch and then the double switch of like, well, she just made an honest mistake, and if it was any other night, then she would have killed him regardless. But then because Chris Evans switched it, or Ransom switched it, and then she messed up, like it feels too coincidental.
Well, the point was that she never messed up.
Well, no,
is that she looked at the liquid instead of the label.
Well, it was how she held. It was how, the feel of it in her hand.
Yeah. No, like I totally get that, and that's absolutely fine. And she was a good person, and she just did whatever her instinct was. But I guess it just felt too coincidental for me.
It's okay. I have other objections to
continue
all of these things. So I'm a little kinder than Andrew. Like we said, low to high. I gave it a 7.
Okay.
Only 1 point.
Only 1 point. It's not significant, but it's a little difference. Okay, so we'll just look at the morphine, right? And we can be really nitpicky and just be like, hey, they don't let you get vials of something that you can pull an overdose amount from. You get vials that are less than an overdose, period. Like that's just what you would be issued. So you just can't pull that amount from this vial because it just wouldn't have that amount because it's a deadly amount. Like that's just really basic medical stuff. That's nitpicky. We can be less picky and we can go to the end of the movie where we find out that Ransom went and saw Fran at 8 a.m., injected her with an unknown amount of morphine, but enough to kill her, and then left her there for 2 hours, and she made it all the way to the hospital and
before she was dead,
potentially almost survived, whereas Harlan just accepted his death was imminent within the next 10 minutes, which isn't how this type of overdose works, and the nurse should understand that. Hey, even if it takes the ambulance 30 minutes to get here and we get you to the hospital, there's still a high percentage chance you survive. That felt horribly contrived for the whole run of it, of just, well, I've just accepted my death. And I get it. He's murder mystery novelist, a little quirky, a little weird. Maybe he's just decided, I've lived a good, maybe this is just what he really wanted to do. He's like, well, I finally have my excuse to kill myself.
I don't know.
Out, yeah. But they didn't really justify it very well. And then the whole, Ransom definitely guaranteed there was at least close to a 2-hour gap between Fran being injected with, again, we don't know how much, but enough to kill her. So it took that amount of time, even to get her to the hospital, and then for them to be back at the mansion interviewing hours later before she dies, right?
Well,
it kind of
you don't get told someone's dead right away. Like
no, but like there's some amount of time. When they left the hospital, she was in danger, but not dead.
Yeah.
And that was something they knew. And then past that point, something happened, right? That's still a huge amount of time compared to the 10 minutes we were told at the start of the movie, which again, maybe it's a lesser dose. I don't know.
But that's the thing. I mean, like if it's a lesser dose, like there's going to be a certain threshold of like either this will kill you or this won't kill you.
Yeah, but like Joel has brought this up before. There are a lot of ways to kill someone slowly, but if you need someone to be dead right now, you only have a couple options. This isn't one of those options.
Yeah.
Just being honest.
Yeah.
So
and basically the only explanation to that is that maybe Marta was just wrong in her assumption that he would be dead in 10 minutes and she told him the wrong info and then he just...
Well, now she's just a bad nurse.
Right. But like the symptoms are going to begin and become irreversibly, increasing,
they'll become progressively worse.
Starting at this point. So like you can fiddle with that timeline a little bit using the words that she said.
Yeah. Like I said, you can...
2 hours is a little bit of a stretch.
I mean...
Well, you don't know that she got, again, 100... Because, again, not only did I open this objection with, hey, if you have a medicine that you can have a lethal dose of, they don't give you a vial that contains a lethal dose, right? So we had 2 lethal doses come out of this vial, technically, because we killed, quote unquote, Harlan at the start. And then the same vial is what's used for Fran, and it's still enough for lethal dose. So we're still in just fantasy land right now.
Well, and especially on that second one, I mean, like Ransom is intending to kill her here.
Right, he's deliberately pulling as much
as he possibly can, and then like it's dripping and it's overflowing at this point, and he just stabs in her neck, and there you go.
Yeah. So I'll definitely give you the inconsistency in the timetable. But in terms of like character motivation, at that point, 1, Harlan is wildly flamboyant in his imagination, right? And then 2, what he is immediately confronted with is, I'm dead either way, right? Like by the time medical help can arrive to me, maybe I won't be dead, but the damage will have been done.
And
right?
even if he's completely saved, she's still guilty of, she's still going to be in trouble for malpractice, right?
And it's not just her, right? Like her family is here without proper immigration papers. And so her whole life is going to be destroyed. And so he sees a way out of that, and he is a big enough egotist that he'll take it. Right. So like from a characterization perspective, I actually really like that, because it speaks to their relationship, her friendship being the most important relationship that he has at this point in his life, which is pretty sad. But
and he also knows, like, we don't know, but he also knows at that point, hey, I've already guaranteed her life is going to be good.
Yeah.
And he made that effort prior to this happening. And it's like, well, the effort I made is going to be wasted.
Yeah.
If she's, it's malpractice or whatever term you want to use for it. Endangerment. I don't know. That's not my only objection to the plot, but it's my biggest one, just because this is the kind of movie where it has to run on the rails, right?
Right.
And that kind of throws it off a little. And then the other rail objection is going to be the pacing. The beginning of the movie is just information. Like you're crammed in, introduced to all these characters, backstories, what happened the night, boom, 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 boom. And then we as the viewer get told what happened.
A version.
Well, but we get told up to that point enough to know why he's dead.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we spend a chunk of time in the middle of this movie with this knowledge, with the story just kind of not going anywhere until the end when it picks back up, and then it's another cram it all in. And it feels like there was some time in there. And while I enjoyed some of the interactions of, Marta, for whatever reason, we have 2 police officers and a detective standing there with the security guard, and Marta's the one to put it in the VHS, and she's the one to take it out. She's going to be the one to carry it through the woods. Whatever, cops who just don't care about chain of custody of evidence, but whatever, that's fine.
And I'm actually curious if a fridge magnet would be strong enough to wipe a VCR tape.
I doubt it, because it's not, you're not even putting it against the tape. You can't get to the tape. It's still in the case, right?
Yeah, like you have to be pretty close to VHS
pretty
tape.
Good magnet. I wasn't prepared to make a huge, and they do at least say, well, it was just shaky, and she like ejected it mid-run, and then and it was probably just crappy VHS. So it's fine.
Well, yeah, like the technology is not consistent enough for you to really complain about it.
It's not digital, so there's it's not a yes or no. I did like the bit with her and, go beyond the whatever object it was. So you're past the cameras, and then she's so flustered she can't get it right, and then she realizes, oh, I messed up. Like, oh gosh, I messed this up.
Yeah,
kind of her, because she's kind of an unwitting accomplice in this the whole way through, and it's kind of all of the ways in which, because she just doesn't want to do this, that she's just not doing it well. You know, when Ransom comes back to break into the house, he doesn't walk through the mud. He goes up the wall and over the gate.
Yeah, he's thinking
because he's deliberate. Where she's just, I have to get here. I have to go here.
Yep.
Joel.
So I'm gonna take a hop, skip, and a jump and go all the way up to 9.
Oh, wow.
I saw that one coming from a mile away. Like I saw Ransom doing it too.
Well, I mean, you get told the great Nana looks right at Marta and goes, Ransom again.
Okay. Now there are a lot of nits to pick, right? And I grant you the difference in time scale on the two murders by the same mechanism. But on the other hand, this is structured in a completely different way than your typical murder mystery.
It is. Sure.
And it is a bold move that I give a lot of points for because I think that they pulled it off.
Well, they're taking a classic and trying to twist the twist.
Yeah. And so because of the disorienting effect of it not following the familiar beats, my experience with it was I had no idea what to expect. We get to the middle of the film and we know what happened. And I'm like, oh, this is a completely different story than I thought. This story is not about who did it. This story is about Marta's experience. Mm-hmm. And so I'm no longer looking for who did it. And that was, I think, the intended effect, which worked in my experience. And so for that, it gets a lot of points.
Okay. So I can offer an olive branch. I don't know if this really belongs in plot or it should have been all the way back up at spectacle, but it's going here. I did like the play, right, where we hit the point where Marta, we know what happened as far as we know, and Marta is beginning to find her way out of the predicament. Yeah. And the camera highlights the spot of blood on her shoe, and that it's the idea of, well, the blood splatter was uninterrupted, so we know he had to do it himself. No one was standing there.
Yeah.
And that's the breaking point evidence, right? Because that, in a classic whodunit, you would never be shown that piece until the very end, which is what happens. But here it's placed not because we're playing a whodunit game, it's because we have entered
it's a suspense.
Tension and suspense of
if she's going to get caught.
Right,
like this is the good person we should be supporting and she's got a way out and we're rooting for her and this is going to betray her.
Yeah.
And honey, go home and change your shoes, wash them, do something different. Stop walking in the mud. What in the world? And then at the end of the movie,
LeBlanc is just like, well, I've been following you around because of that.
It's not LeBlanc, it's just Blanc.
Blanc.
Benoit Blanc. Yeah, he just
Benoit LeBlanc.
No, there's no le.
Stop. That's the joke.
Pepe la Vue. Oh. Anyways, Baton Rouge, stinky cheese.
Okay.
If we're just going to abuse a French accent.
Pierre Escargot and all that.
I forgot about that one. So I guess entertainment?
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, plot bleeds into that a lot for us. So
yeah. So I guess with my knocks against the plot, because I still consider it a whodunit, like even after they have basically even revealed like well, clearly he killed himself, and clearly like she thought she messed up kind of thing. I still thought that they're like going through the film. I still felt that there was someone that was in the clear wrongdoing, because you can't really have a film you can't really have a mystery, murder mystery without someone going to jail.
Yeah, you need that payoff at the end.
You need the payoff. So like the entire time that was happening, I was still looking for someone that was clearly doing wrong things, and maybe just because like I just haven't seen enough mystery films or whatever. But whenever they revealed that, I'm like, okay, that's cool. He didn't actually quotation marks die by any wrongdoing. But I don't believe that. I still feel that there's someone else here that did something wrong. So then the whole time I'm just like, all right, who did it? There was clearly something amiss here. So, that's kind of where I was going with of like, well, it's clearly Chris Evans at this point just because of the fact that he just has so much screen time.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you give a score?
I gave it I gave it a 7.
Okay.
It is right below the threshold of if I won't rewatch it again by myself or with anyone else that has already seen it.
Mhm.
But if there was someone that's like, oh, I've never seen Knives Out before, I'll watch it.
Cool.
Fair enough. Or I guess we're going to slide our way up. Kind of. We're going to stay still for a second because I gave it a 7 too. and for me, a 7 is the threshold of rewatch. And this is by a nose into
Mhm.
that, mostly because this is the first time I've seen it. My biggest objections from an entertainment level are we have a lot of plot that revolves around needles and puking.
Yeah.
Which I didn't go into the science of this supposed thing. It's something that is technically possible, but it's never really been reported ever before. But just the fact that this is what we rely on for plot twists is we're going to get a lot of close-ups of needles and a woman puking is just, I don't
Mhm.
need it.
Yeah, the puking part of it was also something that I just never. I don't like that kind of thing, even if it's like plot relevant. I'm just
Mhm.
kind of like, good.
Well, it's I don't like it, and now it's plot relevant, which means I have to pay attention to it. It's like, I just don't. This isn't what I
Yeah.
want. Besides that, I had another piece, and I just
Well,
totally lost it.
actually, here's a question too: Are all of the knives on the big donut? Are they all fake knives?
We have no way of knowing.
Because like
Did you just pick a
did
bad
you just
one?
pick up the wrong knife at the end to try and kill Marta?
I have no answer for that.
So I don't know, like because like some of those are like really long. You can't really have a fake knife unless it's
Mhm.
rubber. So I don't know. There's a couple other.
It could be dull. It would still really hurt if someone.
I mean, you could
threw
still
you to
kill
the
someone
floor.
with a dull knife.
Oh yeah, no. Well, I mean, like it could just be unsharpened. It's just a flat piece of steel.
Yeah.
It still really hurt at a minimum.
It probably wouldn't kill her unless there was a ton of force behind it. But
Well, I mean,
yeah.
you still have the retractor, right? So like
yeah,
the amount of force that something on a retracting spring can exert is capped by the spring of the.
Oh, no.
By the
Oh, no,
force
we're
of the-
just
We're not
talking
worried.
just,
We're
like,
not
one
worried
of the
about switchblade.
longer-
We're talking about if he picked a bigger knife off there that would
like a
not
longer
be
blade
as
that
good.
can't
Yeah.
retract all the way into the. Yeah.
into the hill.
Okay. Anyways, continue. Sorry, I'm done.
I had something else and I can't pull it up. I can't dredge it up yet. So I'm gonna pass it off to Joel
Okay.
and try and think
So
about it.
as counterpoint to everything that you have said, I validate you. I agree that is a
I feel validated.
perspective that is perfectly reasonable. But at the same time, I'm going to say that I gave this a 10.
Oh wow.
And I absolutely loved the Marta throws up every time she tells a lie
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
Right. Like it is a big ask. It is a really big ask for a writer to say to an audience in a genre that is not science fiction or fantasy, this is
Very grounded in the real world.
here's a rule, right?
Mhm.
This is the rule that our plot follows and hinges on. And in other genres, that's very commonplace.
Mhm.
In this genre, it is a big ask and it's a very bold thing to do. But
It is
once you get past it,
Mhm.
it allows you to do a lot of really, really fun things.
Right.
Now, if you really don't like watching people be sick, even discreetly on screen, then you're not going to like it.
That's not discreet at all. She throws up on Chris Evans right at the
okay,
end.
one time.
That is
and-
more than enough.
And he deserved it.
It is again in this style of setting that is just real.
Mhm,
It is a huge line of credit on some disbelief dollars
mhm.
that they don't earn very well because it's just real and it's just
I mean, I absolutely believe that there are people in this world that have a psychosomatic thing to where like if they feel that they are being dishonest, they will get sick.
I mean, typically you would stereotypically expect that to accompany some sort of trauma response,
right.
Yeah.
which we don't have any evidence of in this particular case. It's just she throws up when she lies. Like that's just
what it is.
they give you the rule.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, Joel, you have small children and they attempt to get away with white lies all the time, I imagine, because that's what childs do.
Oh yeah.
Could you imagine if one of your children was Marta and it's just the natural child white lie just meant she puked? your house would be so miserable.
I like it would be hilarious in
Up for adoption
in another
just instantly.
10 years it would be hilarious. Right now it would be absolutely
It would be just a
miserable.
nightmare, right?
because they don't understand yet how to control that and that it's really not worth it. You're right.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, no, it's just like, oh, what have you been up to today? Okay, great.
Don't even say any words.
Yeah, well, first I'm gonna go change my shoes, and second, you are in big trouble, young lady. Like, and then also being just a nurse with that condition.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I was like,
whoa.
oh, am I going to be okay? Yeah,
everything's gonna be
great.
right on.
well, you notice she doesn't work in a hospital, so
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a bespoke nurse where people pay her a lot of money to lie to them instead of just a little. Well, I still have not come up with what my other issue was with entertainment, and
It's
it's
fine.
okay. I have a score. It's there. One day I'll remember it. But I think unless anyone else has got anything. So Joel, actually, I have a question. Joel,
Yeah.
how many times have you watched the movie?
3 times.
So we have a 3, a 2, and a 1.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. On that note, I do believe that is everything we have for this episode. So until next time, I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joel.
And as always, every spoiler was intended. I'm actually really annoyed. I cannot remember my other... Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, you can support the show for as low as $1 at patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast. We also have a Discord server and would love to have more people joining in the conversation. Links are in the description below. Thank you.